Everyone is asking the wrong question. Not can the US win this war? Not will Iran back down? Not how long before the missiles stop? The question is, what is Iran actually targeting? Because if you think Hormuz is a 20th century oil play, you are looking at the wrong century. And you are missing the most structurally devastating thing that has happened to American power since the invasion of Iraq. Let's start with a fact almost nobody is connecting to this war. The United States de-industrialized itself over 40 years, not by accident, by deliberate policy choice. It started with UK's Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who needed to break the unions and found the fastest way to do that was to break industry itself. Ship the factories out. Let someone else make things. As Yanis Varoufakis, former finance minister of Greece, one of the very few Western economists with the structural honesty to say what is actually happening, put it very precisely. They leveraged their financial sector first, then the big tech sector, and they thought they could get away without having an industry. The manufacturing left, then heavy industry left, then most defense production capacity. What remained? Finance, software, and now the sector that every government, every boardroom, every think tank in Washington has unanimously declared is America's irreplaceable economic future: artificial intelligence. AI is not a metaphor here. AI is the literal last standing economic engine the United States has left after 40 years of hollowing out everything else. The training clusters, the inference engines, the data centers now drawing more electricity than some mid-sized countries. This is the bet. The whole bet. The only bet left on the table after everything else was shipped to China, Vietnam, and Southeast Asia. Now, ask yourself one question. What does artificial intelligence actually run on? Not code, not algorithms, not venture capital. Power, electricity. Enormous, uninterrupted, 24 hours a day rivers of electrical power. Training a single large AI model consumes more electricity than some small countries use in a month. The AI infrastructure build-out the United States is betting its post-industrial economic identity on requires energy at a scale that dwarfs anything the 20th century industrial economy ever demanded. And what does electricity still run on in 2026, despite 30 years of green energy promises and solar panel press releases? Oil, gas, fossil fuels, things that travel through pipelines and tankers and narrow maritime choke points. Choke points like a 33-kilometer stretch of water between Iran and Oman. Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, speaking from Tehran under live bombardment from a different studio than the one that was bombed the night before he used it, said this very clearly. The United States is desperate to succeed in AI because it is the last hope of the US economy. Iran is driving energy prices right through the roof. If the Americans escalate, the Iranians can tighten the screw. A man under bombs, identifying the structural target, naming it with precision. Does that sound like improvisation to you? I can already hear the comments forming. Let's address them directly.
But the US produces its own oil. Shale revolution, energy independence. This whole argument collapses.
Partially fair. The US does produce significant domestic oil. Pump pain is real but survivable domestically. But here is what that argument misses entirely. AI is not a domestic competition. AI is a global race against China, against their DeepSeek, against every sovereign power that has decided technological dominance is the new reserve currency of geopolitical power. And when global energy prices spike past $100, past $120, past wherever Hormuz keeps them while it stays closed, every data center operator, every cloud provider, every AI infrastructure company in the United States pays that global market price. Every single one. And China? China gets its oil from Russia. Overland pipelines. Zero Hormuz exposure. While American AI infrastructure bleeds through energy cost inflation, China's AI build-out runs at pre-crisis energy prices. Iran does not need to bomb Silicon Valley. It just needs to keep one strait closed.
You're overthinking this. Iran is just trying to survive. There is no grand strategy here.
Is there not? Because Marandi, who watched his broadcast studio get targeted, who taught his last class before universities shut down after 168 schoolgirls were killed in day one, connected these dots himself. Not in a think tank, not in an academic journal, on camera, under fire, in real time. And Varoufakis, watching from the outside, reached the same structural conclusion. The US bet everything on big tech and AI after de-industrializing for 40 years. Iran is targeting the energy underbelly of that bet. Two analysts, two vantage points, same structural read.
Iran can't sustain this. Their economy is in shambles, completely broken. They will collapse before Washington even blinks.
Let's do the math. An Iranian ballistic missile costs approximately $50,000. We did this in our last segment. An Iron Dome interceptor costs tens of millions and intercepts roughly 5% of Iranian ballistic missiles. The rest arrive. Iran has shifted to decoy deployment, multiple warheads per salvo. Missiles are made from non-conventional materials such as wood so that they would absorb radar signals, according to some reports. Saturation patterns designed to overwhelm point defense systems built for a different threat entirely. An Iranian drone costs a few $1,000s. The American counter-drone missile costs several $100,000. Who exactly is sustaining what here? If this structural framing is landing for you, you know this is not the analysis you find anywhere else. Hit subscribe and ring the bell every week, no exceptions. The Eagle's View is the only place reading these gears before the headlines name them. Now, here is where it gets darker and more structurally interesting. The United States entered this war without factoring in Hormuz closure as a serious scenario. Varoufakis and Diesen, professor of Russia studies at the University of Southeast Norway and one of the sharpest geopolitical analysts currently working in the Western academic world, both documented the same breathtaking intelligence failure. Washington apparently assessed that Iran would not shut the strait because the economic consequences would be too damaging for Iran itself. Stop and sit with that for a moment. The United States launched a major military campaign against a country and assumed that country would not use its most powerful economic weapon because it would hurt Iran too. Iran shut Hormuz anyway, right away, on day one, because Iran made an existential calculation that runs beyond quarterly economics, and the US had no plan B. That is not a military failure. That is a worldview failure. The assumption that Iran would calculate like a Western finance ministry, rationally in short-term horizons, weighing quarterly costs against quarterly benefits, was built into the war plan from the beginning. And it was catastrophically wrong. And then, on March 13th and 14th, the United States struck military installations on Harg Island. If you don't know what Harg Island is, here is the number that matters. Roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil exports flow through it. The US did not bomb the oil terminals. Not yet. Trump announced publicly that those terminals could be next if Iran keeps the strait closed. Pause here for a moment. Let this sink in. Iran has not bombed the GCC desalination plants. Not yet. The US has not bombed Harg's oil export infrastructure. Not yet. Both sides are now sitting in the same room with the same posture, gun on the table, hand not on the trigger, not because they are afraid to shoot, because the gun is more valuable unfired than fired. A destroyed Harg terminal cannot be used as a leverage. A standing Harg terminal that could be destroyed tomorrow is the most powerful diplomatic instrument on the board. This is not two sides losing control of a war. This is two sides negotiating through architecture, using precision restraints to communicate red lines that no diplomatic channel is currently open to transmit. Which raises the question that nobody in the Western press is asking. If both sides are holding their most catastrophic weapons in reserve, what exactly are the conditions under which one of them decides to stop holding back? And who decides that? In Washington, the political class is locked in bipartisan consensus for the war. In Tehran, The supreme leader's son just inherited a population fusing harder under every bomb. Neither side has a clean exit. Both sides have a trigger they haven't pulled. That word, yet, is now doing overtime in this conflict. Now, here is the question nobody in the mainstream conversation is asking. The United States Congress, both chambers, Democrats and Republicans, every seat gave a standing ovation when Trump announced strikes on Iran. According to Marandi, it was the single bipartisan moment in an otherwise completely fractured political body. The only issue that unified them. The only applause that came from both sides of the aisle simultaneously. When is the last time those two sides agreed on anything? What does that tell you about where the actual decision sat? And who made it? And who will make the next one? Varoufakis goes further. Trump 1.0 resisted Israel's pressure to go to war with Iran. 4 years, immense pressure from Tel Aviv. Consistently, he held. Then Trump 2.0 walks in and within months is inside a war with no exit strategy, no coherent narrative, and no contingency for Hormuz closing, which is the first thing any competent strategic analyst should have modeled. Varoufakis' conclusion is the only rational explanation is that Netanyahu acquired leverage over Trump 2.0 that he did not have over Trump 1.0. He is careful about what that leverage was or may be. We will find out, he says, in 5, 10, or maybe 20 years. That is a structural observation, believe it or not a conspiracy, a structural observation about leverage. About what Tier 3 actors do when they need a Tier 6 hammer they do not own themselves, and about the price extracted to borrow it. I'm talking about power tiers. Tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you need more information about them, my previous videos and Substack article specifically written about that, and on Patreon also, they cover those bases. So here is where I leave you. Not with conclusions, with the right questions. If Iran is conducting precision strategic targeting of America's AI infrastructure through sustained energy price pressure, what does the endgame look like for an economy with no industrial fallback, no domestic energy immunity from global price shocks, and a ruling class that spent 40 years trading factories for financial instruments and data centers? If the deindustrialization of the West was, as Varoufakis documents in meticulous historical detail, the deliberate policy choice of Western ruling classes who shipped the factories out to break unions and leverage finance instead, then who is this war protecting? The workers who lost those factories? Or the class that made that trade and now needs a war to distract from where it landed? If the entire US Congress stands together only for war on Iran, what does that tell you about who is actually running Tier 3, political tier, in Washington? And who owns the machinery that produces that level of bipartisan alignment on exactly one issue? If Iran, a country under 24-hour bombardment, schools closed, cities on fire, 168 schoolgirls killed on day one, television studios targeted the night after they were used, if that country's population gathers in public squares under live airstrikes to show solidarity with its armed forces, what exactly is the American bombing strategy designed to achieve? Because it seems to be producing the opposite of its intended result with extraordinary consistency. Marandi named the US strategic objective directly: regime change first. If that fails, carpet bomb the social fabric into civil strife. That is why emergency services are targeted. Ambulance headquarters, the Red Crescent building, double tap strikes that wait for rescuers before hitting the same location a second time. Not random, doctrinal, and it is producing the most unified Iranian public in a generation. The Yemen exit model is sitting right there, available off the shelf. Trump bombed Yemen for 7 weeks, declared victory, and walked away. Yemen did not capitulate, however. Yemen won. Trump called it a win anyway. The face-saving fiction has been used before. It worked before. The question is not whether that exit is possible. The question is whether the forces that designed this war will allow it. That question has an answer. You probably already know what it is. I will let you sit with it. The AI infrastructure angle is the story Western media will not touch, because touching it means asking who benefits from keeping America deindustrialized, energy dependent, and locked into a war that guarantees those conditions continue indefinitely. That question is not going away. Subscribe now. Don't wait for the headlines to catch up to the gears. That's a wrap for today, dear friends. I'll see you next week.